organization.
You're all set.
Thank you. Any like the. Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to convene the Washington County Public Safety Committee meeting for the month of May. Motion to accept the minutes from our May 2nd meeting. So, thank you, Dana. Second by Dana. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Department reports. EMS, Bruce.
Yeah, just moving Michelle Carvis up to Roland Steve's is giving the job up. So Michelle had a grant forever. She's a PA at the hospital. Just taking his position until the end of the year. And they're all coming up again. And I also want to just take a quick minute. Thank you to all the supervisors who were here on the 2nd. Took the time to go over it for effort rescue. I think it was a good learning experience, and I appreciate it as well as the administration. So, and they certainly appreciate it.
Thank you, Bruce. So motion to move the advisory board appointments to the full board. Thank you, Dana. Second.
Yeah.
No, it couldn't be Jeff. Fred? By Dave. Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Now we're on to the sheriff. Sir.
We just wanted to move money from 0.4 accounts to 0.2 accounts.
Motion to, well, that's a move to finance, I believe.
Got me a lot more.
Yeah.
So when they put money in the accounts, they put some of the money in the 0.4s for like supplies, things that work, fixed assets. And one of the things that we're purchasing are cabinets, and they are going to be like not the 0.2 accounts. It's just shifting the money, so it's coming out of your. So move to finance.
Dave, thank you. Seconded by Sue. Any other discussion?
This question, these gun cabinets, they're to secure your weapons or they're seized weapons?
No, specifically the weapons that we purchased for active shooter incidents through the Department of Defense.
They came in under budget, so there was money left that we had said we'd use for ARPA, and they're using this money now for the cabinets, but they got to move between the systems.
Okay. I have a question about the weapons that you don't belong. You know, on a case or something like that. In case, you know, somebody imminent risk. What's the name?
ERPO, Extreme Risk Protection Order.
Village of Hudson or Village of Fort Edward Police Department no longer functioning, but they have a jail cell. Can you use that to secure material?
I'm not aware of a jail cell they have. They have an evidence room per se.
Where would they hold people?
What else? Yeah, they never had a jail cell.
They never had a jail cell?
No. Hudson Falls did, but I believe they can't hold people there anymore either.
It sounds like a very secure place to hold material. Thank you.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you, sir. Motion carried. All right. Sir, Tony, floor is yours.
So last to come up here.
It's up to you. I know that you may want to.
So I'm glad the captain's here because he is probably our last trained crash reconstruction person with experience, right? So we have some that are working on it. So there's a couple of things that the sheriff and I have been talking about and what we're seeing in the county. So I just really want to start the conversation and kind of bring you all up to speed. When there is a car crash, some would call it an accident. If you go to the training, they say there's no such thing as an accident in that regard. But the crash reconstruction analysis, there's an investment piece, both in terms of personnel and money, but there's also the value that comes from it. So one of the things we're seeing in the county of recency is it seems to be an increase in the number of car pedestrian, car bike, car motorcycle, or single car crashes that are not necessarily witnessed. And so there's a two-prong issue that occurs at that point. One is someone at fault criminally? Or as importantly, is the driver not at fault criminally? And there is also a use, all of the stuff I'm going to talk about briefly also has value in other criminal investigations, but certainly in the realm of car crashes. And so when we see that happen, a decision has to be made by the sheriff's department when they arrive on scene. And that is, one, do we feel the need or is there a need for a crash reconstruction analysis done? If that's the case, and the captain can certainly correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in that instance, the road is closed to preserve evidence, to preserve the scene, so that a crash reconstruction analysis can occur. We currently have neither the equipment nor sufficiently trained personnel. Without the equipment, you can't do it to perform that. So what the county has done, using the really the great relationships that they've established with neighboring counties, is contact Saratoga, Warren, or the state police to send their units over. There's some challenges with that. The most obvious to me is, imagine County or State Route 149 on a Friday afternoon in the summer. You have a car crash, we need to investigate it. If you have to close the road and you call Saratoga, Warren, and the state police, and they say, yes, but we're tied up, it'll be 4 or 5 hours. You now have the sheriff's department in that very untenable position of having to shut the road down or make other decisions. The reality is, if you don't do the full investigation, accountability becomes difficult. Also, exoneration, right? I mean, if someone's not at fault, that can also be established through that process. I know in White Creek, a week and a half ago, there was a single car crash, 5 kids in the car. That was around 12:15 in the afternoon. It was probably 7 o'clock at night they were still there, in large part because we had to wait for Saratoga County to be able to send it. I think that challenge, certainly, and the availability of we certainly have the talent. How many deputies have started the process?
Just, I would to an investigator and sergeant.
Yep. So the in-house value, I should have told Tony ahead of time, I was going to put him on the spot, but the in-house value of having it, I think, from a public safety standpoint, is invaluable. When you have that level of investigative technique and talent in-house, they can arrive on scenes much quicker. Your reports are going to necessarily be quicker because it's our county and they're going to take priority. And if you have, if you work for another county and you're answering that boss and you have 5 reports that you have to complete, you're going to take care of that first. And that's not a slight against the agencies that help us. It's just the reality of life and work. If you don't have it, then, when we don't have that resource or we haven't engaged in that effort because they haven't been available, then you leave the families of the victims left wondering, was everything done? And that matters. That whole is a reality, versus if you can say, we had an incident in Hudson Falls where everything was done that could possibly be done, and it doesn't lessen the sting, but it certainly, I think, helps them feel, okay, that was addressed properly. From a public safety and a preventative standpoint, we're certainly seeing statewide an increase, and it happens, and it's across the country where they legalized cannabis, an increase in impaired driving crashes. So I think that's just the reality that's going to be here. So to have that in-house is invaluable. But just
2 questions for you, sir. Understand the rationale. Capital investment. So thanks for having folks trained and just understanding what it takes to do the investigation properly. So what kind of hardware, what's the capital investment?
yeah, I'm trying to recall. I know when the sheriff and I last spoke, we're in like $75,000-$80,000 range for the instruments. Is that about right? For the scanner. And then what is it for the? There's 2 units, right? You have a total station and a scanner.
Technology's come a long way since but they have scanners now. Most agencies still use the total station, which is a robotic transit. All agencies at this point, they have a scanner, are still doing it. Stations.
So let's say roughly $100,000 plus or minus. The other issue becomes, and when Captain and I were talking about a case last week, we spoke briefly about it. And the thing you'd want is to bring a sufficient number of deputies and investigators up to speed on the training, and then they would want to go and work with our neighboring counties for experience, right? I mean, I think that's a key part.
You need more than just the classroom, right?
And then the other hard part becomes, like, we've had some cases where we've needed other agencies, officers as witnesses, and there's a different level of response and encouragement that can come with making one available when it's our county versus, you know, a non. So that's sort of the timing to kind of get the conversation going. I don't want to bring it up. We didn't want to bring it up in the budget and then have, okay, now we have the money and now we don't have people that can use the stuff. So I think it really has to be sort of, there'd be a lengthy process.
Dana, you had a question?
Yes, when we use the other counties, is there compensation to them for their usage, their man hours, things?
I don't believe they have not billed us yet.
So if we have a unit and they need it, we probably wouldn't bill them.
Certainly we I think, when did you stop with the training? I think probably 7-8 years ago was the last case you did. Yeah, we're trained, yeah.
After that, I carried it for
Yep. And then, so we would certainly owe a debt for the last 7 or 8 years, but yeah.
Motor vehicle scenes, just like criminal scenes, aren't you still presumed innocent?
And this is part of working through that. That's actually at trial. You know, in terms of the investigation, there's no presumption. We just are trying to gather the facts and understand what happened. So, you know, as you gather facts, if it says, you know, if the speed limit on the road is 30 miles an hour and everything, and the only thing you have is the ability to recreate the scene through one of these units, and you create it in a way that it shows that that person's not criminally liable, then at that front end stage, you're simply saying there's no charges filed. That is probably to that person far more valuable than.
And did you say that it's used where there are no witnesses, or if there are witnesses, you would not use this as well?
No, we would, but there's instances when if you don't have any witnesses, you're then it's all sort of what does the scene tell us, and you know how you have to determine speed. You know, there's a lot of things that they do from sorts of technical terms you learn over time, but they garner that from being present on the scene.
You've thought about this a little while. Have you thought about where the money would come from, or would this be new budgeted?
It'd be new money, to my knowledge. I mean, I know the sheriff has long sort of thought about trying to how to do this, and that's why I wanted to start in May, not August, because I do think it would be new money. From the public safety standpoint, it's kind of that, how do we keep our roads safe? And admittedly, this is after the fact, but accountability is important.
That traffic safety board that we just revitalized, are they involved?
No, not that I know of.
They're involved in prevention. So
Is there a training class involved with the two that are taking it already?
No, it's free through New York State. Yes.
So the training's free and they're employed. So it's just you're building up their skills.
Yes.
And in the last 7 years, has there been that many call-outs to do this from
For other counties?
Other counties? That's what it was. What's the data?
Well, I know in the last month we've had 3.
Stan?
Yeah, just answer Dana's question to become clear on it. So when you say had billed us, you refer to DA's office or the county general?
I'm assuming that if they had sent a bill to the sheriff's department, he would have
That'll
floated
come out
out
of
to
your,
me.
that'll come out of your budget?
But yeah,
Okay.
but
I wasn't sure which budget.
it's done as a courtesy, but there's, correct.
There's no budget will come out of
Yeah.
it, so.
Chair,
I just have to say, I'm pretty strongly support, especially getting the equipment, since of training people to get the equipment to do it. I would also point out that every DEC region's got an accident reconstruction stand. At least every other one's got the equipment. So that's another resource that we started out, of course, you gotta train them on accident, motor vehicle stuff. We use them for hunting accidents a lot. But they're all, had to get trained, they're always running around doing vehicle accidents and stuff, so that's another resource if you need it in the meantime, to get you guys trained up.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing with the technology since, over the last 10 years, you see the utilization. I mean, it's a geometry and physics meet after the fact analysis. You can use it in a variety of criminal settings and crime scene settings. No different than with the drones. That was very helpful in terms of part of our investigation on this.
Technology has come so far. If you look at somebody selling real estate and they put you in a home and you can do a 360 view and walk through different rooms, that's what this scanner, the new scanners can do for a scene, whether it be a homicide or a crash or anything like that. You can scan the different rooms and actually walk your jury through that to show them what somebody was seeing as they were going through the scene as well. When I started, Bruce Hamilton and I would rotate along the road and measure off. That's how hard it's going.
is there, so obviously we buy the hardware, comes with a software package. Now we gotta service the software, and we have useful life on the hardware perhaps as well.
I mean, we have a total station. Unfortunately, it's so outdated, it doesn't support any software any longer. So that's what it's a lot of times when the software advances, the hardware hasn't advanced, it'll accept that new software. It's probably planned obsolescence from the companies, but that's just how it works. So I would say at least 10 years or 15 software issues.
Computers is 5 to 7.
Yeah, so in our other one we had for a very long time, but we worked it for a long time.
My point to this is it's not a one-time buy. We'll have to program in sustainment of it. Good question. Don't know.
I mean, it's certainly an investment, and I think part of it is you touched on the juries expect it now too, right? They don't expect someone to go out with that long roll tape and measure off 100 feet and do the math of that's just not the way it works.
Sounds like it should be in a capital plan, doesn't it?
So I was actually going to say that tomorrow in my presentation, you're going to hear a request from me to make an investment in the capital plan. This might be a valid part of that conversation.
And that proximate, and then
That's perfect.
good time thanks for leaving it up.
Yeah.
But I do think it.
Your day good.
It's right. You should have a day late. I mean, it is one of those things that, and the other thing, it's much like with DREs, right? There was a great talk about we have all these DREs, but if I call and need a DRE, and they're in Chestertown, and the crash was in White Creek, and the person's at Bennington Hospital, the DRE arriving at Bennington Hospital 3 hours after, 4 hours after the incident is of little value. Picture a rainstorm, and we had a hit on 29 on the 4th of July, one time, right at the middle there in Center.
Fall.
What is it?
Little Fall?
No, Center Falls. Just between Greenwich and Salem. And a decision was made by the state police to not call in the total station because they were down in Greene County or something. They want to wait and shut down a major road. That's unfortunate, but that's a decision they'll have to make.
So the answer is yes, it should go to.
That way we can just get some ideas so the sheriff can be in kind of thinking about how does he want to be moving personnel and training if necessary. So I appreciate it.
Tony, could we get some kind of some kind of even rough sketches of what the number is?
For tomorrow.
In a perfect world, what would set you up for success?
I don't think we need that for tomorrow.
No, not for tomorrow, no, need it for tomorrow, just kind of get some kind of loose framework on what that might look like.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other questions for Tom or the other Tom?
You're gonna work with her.
Well, get the numbers set up. Keep folks.
Good with that. See
Is
where
it-
the trust lives. I
Is
don't-
it-
it doesn't-
It's sure.
Yeah, it's sure, isn't it?
Well, if it'd be hooked to our network, she should take a look at it. Says the cybersecurity guy. It's gonna give us-
Is it hooked to our network?
I don't know, like, we'll plug into our computer, any of our computers, I assume it will.
Yeah, we'll have to plug it in, you'll take all the raw data from the scene and put it into the program, and then it'll help you draw the maps.
It should be a 2-second review, but it should be, anything that goes into our network, we gotta at least have that IT price take a look at it, and make sure it's not.
With the data from this system, the one that,
Thanks. I don't know if it would deploy that.
It's what we're doing with the state police on a case right now, they have a separate, but their system, I don't know if it would be the same one we would use, but it's got its own proprietary software. They just give us access to it and it functions that way. It would probably get shared separate.
Well, because the raw data is gonna have to be stored somewhere, and then
Right.
you get the final product.
To be able to
where you would have to go to the prosecution.
What's that?
I thought it depends on anybody, wouldn't it?
Right, it comes to us, but it doesn't have to go through Axon to get to us. That's just that's where they sort of house their stuff to then transfer it to us. So however that happens.
So, Dave, that's a good point. I mean, there's a lot of business rules that need to be put in place. Once we have it, data-wise,
Because we're getting the data anyways. It's just where it comes from.
control of the data, access to the data. Any other questions? Mr. Jordan, thank you. Thank you, appreciate it. All right, Glenn, I see you over there. Hi, sir. The floor is yours.
Afternoon. For our RFP for the master services agreement, we had received one proposal which didn't meet the needs or requirements for the MSA or for the state. We'd like to, not sure if we have to reject that and then
Reissue.
reissue the RFP. It was a Solita, CHLOETA, they're a company out of Oklahoma. And part of the master services agreement is doing the hazard mitigation plan. And part of the requirements from the state is that they have done a hazard mitigation plan before that's been approved by FEMA, which they have not. So they didn't meet the requirements of the RFP. But then we found out after the fact that we were too restrictive in some of the language of the RFP and trying to meet the state's MWPE requirements. So we'd like to reject their bid and then reissue the RFA with less restrictive.
Motion. Dan Morgan, second. Any other questions? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
And then we have a nomination from Greenwich Fire for Don Ward for the Fire Advisory Board.
Don Ward, unknown name. Not sure if we can do that.
He been better.
Is he a resident?
Didn't know he was a firefighter.
Motion? Thanks, Dan, Dave. Any other questions, discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other business? Hearing none, we're adjourned.
We should wait for the meeting.